Hello, today we are interviewing Terry from Impromtu studio in Newcastle, and we'll be asking him some questions about studio teaching methods and so forth. Terry, thank you and welcome.
Hi Duncan.
How long have you had this studio for?
This particular location since the year 2000. Prior to that I was in a house in Mayfield, which eventually was not big enough, so we found a commercial premise and came to here.
Right. And in terms of teaching, we know that you teach classical guitar. What sort of age range of students you've had since you started teaching?
From probably 4 to 70, a whole range, in both individual, group and then ensemble classes.
Right,
Yeah.
great. And let's say suppose some student come in wanting to learn, say, heavy metal guitar, and someone who wants to learn classical guitar or jazz. How would your approach be to teaching various styles?
Okay, depending on the skill set the student comes with, we may need to start from very basic ideas. The more contemporary rock, heavy rock, and to some extent jazz players, initially it's some ear training, having them understand a major scale, what that relates to in the way of chords as well. So some basic chord, some basic knowledge of harmony, and then dexterity exercises. Often the exercises for the left hand and right hand are all about getting the hand in the right position, and for the left hand, so that they're not holding the instrument like a hammer, they're actually having their fingers free to move and maneuver around the instrument. And then with their right hand, depending on the technique they want, plectrum or finger style, there are many exercises there that help coordinate left to right hand. So we've got that big issue with the guitar, that it's not one finger creates a sound.
Right.
One hand has to actually fret the notes, while the other hand has to coordinate the movement to pick at exactly the right time.
Right.
So there's coordination exercises, general dexterity, which are just simple movements up and down the fretboard and across. So musically they may make no sense, but in control and generally moving forward with skill against those chords and scales, that's how they develop their technique. That whole time it's tuning their ear. I have them listen to things and try and work out, what do you think's happening in this song? Why do you want to learn that song? What is it that drew you to it? So that they're delving deeper into the music that they want to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And how do you keep track of students' progress over say weeks or months in terms of how they're going about their what you call practicing, and how do you inform parents and so forth of their progress?
Okay, I take notes and I get parents to be involved as much as they can. Now, whether it's just listening out to what they're doing or just giving me some feedback. How do you think they went this week? And that might be after the lesson, because I've had numerous students over the years. I've been teaching for nearly 40 years, the guitar, that you will find the mother will tell you at the end of the lesson they've done nothing. But it's obvious from the start of the lesson that they've not practiced.
Right.
So what I do is we do the practice then. And then by the end of the lesson, we've got a short period of time to actually build. So they can see in that short time that if I practice, I can advance.
Right.
So eventually they start to practice more.
Right.
And then they come in and say, I'm ready, what's new?
Right.
As opposed to, I've got to play the guitar. So it's very interesting. And the other thing I do is I use software. There's a number of programs, but one specific to the guitar is a thing called Guitar Pro.
Right.
And it has a free affiliate, if you like, which is very similar, called Tux Guitar.
Right.
And it's a program that allows the student not only to see notation, tablature, but also a fretboard of where they're meant to be playing notes, chords, the number of notes to strum in a chord, and vice versa. So I create little pieces. It also allows us to vary the tempo
Yeah.
without changing pitch because
Right.
it's MIDI generated sound.
Yeah.
So this allows the student, excuse me, to actually advance and speed up. So we might leave
Right.
at 60 beats on the lesson day,
Right.
and I'll say try and advance by 5 after
Right.
each
Okay.
session
Yeah. Yeah.
in the speed. Now whether that's a scale, a chord change, or it's
Yeah.
just strumming,
Yeah.
it all depends on the current level they're at,
Yeah.
and what they want to achieve by the end of the week.
Yeah.
So that software-based thing is very good because they can hear
Yeah.
and play along with it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a karaoke. Situation,
Yeah.
and you can be very complex with it. You know,
Right,
you
right.
can have Van Halen solos, and
Yes,
all
yes.
that sort of thing
Yes.
from that, as well as classical material.
Sure. Right. Yeah. In terms of, while we're speaking of technology, there are many programs out there these days. In the last 20 years has been a huge surge in technological advances in teaching. Do you integrate some of those? Do you still teach, say, guitar from other resources, as in old books or recent books or anything like that?
Definitely. Some of the very early classical methods have some excellent exercises in them.
Mm-hmm.
So often you'll cherry pick
Yeah.
depending on the student's weakness.
Right.
So having a large catalogue of both scores,
Yeah.
a lot I've turned into PDFs so I can pass them on in sections to the students.
Yeah.
But because you know, finding a lot of these things
Yeah.
in book format nowadays is very hard.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, I use those resources, but also even DAWs,
yeah.
digital
right,
recording
yeah,
software.
Yeah.
Most of the kids now have got a laptop or an iPad that can play things back.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll record something for them if it's not available.
Yes.
They can listen, and depending on which program they use, like Reaper,
Yeah.
they can also stretch audio to slow it down or compress it, the file, the WAV file,
Yes.
to speed it up and maintain pitch.
Right.
So they've got a bit of range there
Yeah.
where they can increase the tempo as well.
Yeah. Right.
So it's it's a
Right.
whole interesting approach, and some of the students will say, "Can I record on my phone as we're doing now
Yes.
the lesson so I remember XYZ?"
Yeah.
And
right.
that's fine as well.
Yeah. A lot of teachers that I've come across throughout the years, it's always mumbled on about, oh, look, a kid wants to come in and wants to play an advanced piece straight away, or else they're not satisfied. You know, they want to get onto it straight away. Have you any challenging situations from students, let's say, where they just want to get ahead with something that a little bit ahead of their, what you call, schedule, you might say, their progress?
Definitely. So what I do is I say, okay, let's look at this piece of music and we'll analyse it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think's happening here? How do you think he's doing that? Or they're doing that?
Yeah.
So we'll look at that, I'll play it, and then I'll say to him, now, are you able to make this stretch or this movement? And he'll say no. So well, let's make an exercise for that.
Right.
So you'll make little
right,
exercises for excerpts of the song. So
Right.
what you're doing is you're breaking this down to that.
Right.
And
right.
they'll be able to say, okay, well, I can master that. And that
Okay.
gives them incentive
Yeah.
to listen more
Yeah.
and then say, okay, I've got this technique
Yeah.
and we can move it around the fretboard, because in some instances, some contemporary jazz, rock,
Yeah.
blues players
Yeah.
will often have a lick
Mm-hmm.
that they'll then move around the fretboard.
Right.
So we'll
right.
talk about, okay, if I play it here, what do I do? But if I move here, because of the nature of the instrument and the tuning,
Yeah.
the fingering changes.
Right.
So
right,
we talk
yeah.
about, okay, so to make it sound the same,
Yeah.
I can't use the same fingering here.
Right.
And you've got to
okay.
then work on their dexterity again. So
Right.
it's back to saying, how does your hand work?
Yeah.
Are you capable of doing this?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll just sit in your room
Yeah.
and not be able to do it.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's talking to them, getting them on side with the fact that to play it,
Yeah.
you need a skill set.
Right.
And then to get your skill set, you shrink it down to the components of the performance and then go from there.
great idea. That, yeah, and do you stay up to date with current technology that's going on?
Yes, definitely. Having taught until quite recently at university level with incoming young students, I'm very familiar with current repertoire.
Yeah,
What's very interesting though is a lot of the recent years, they've all harked back to Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Gary Moore,
yeah,
Santana.
yeah,
It's like there's been this retro revival,
yeah,
but then there's also all the current guys, the Andy McKees on the acoustic guitar where both hands are on the fretboard.
yeah,
So there's all of these new skills that you need to learn, but it's all by analysis. And with the advent I suppose the last 20 years
yeah,
of the internet,
yeah,
YouTube, the Ultimate Guitar,
Yeah.
MIDI file type
Yeah.
places, and then and guitar tabs, and the numerous videos,
Mhm.
both good and bad,
yeah,
that are showing these techniques and breaking them down.
yeah,
Like someone puts their hand up, I've learned it now, and I'll
Yeah.
show you how I play it.
yeah,
And then you'll see discrepancies from that to the original performance,
yeah,
and then you'll say, well, okay, don't look at that one, look at this one. So
Right.
a lot of the time you'll have to dig a little deeper
yeah,
to find the original performer.
yeah,
Is that what you're listening to? Is that what you want to play?
Right, yeah.
And then you go from there.
Right.
So to keep up with technology, it's just a matter of keeping your ears open, really.
yeah, right,
And
yeah,
being in touch with the younger players
yeah.
that are, the now type.
Sure,
people,
sure. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank. All right. If you have certain students, how do you plan and organise? Let's say, suppose you've got a student coming, a beginner, like for say a term or something. How would you organise lesson plans for a particular student over a period of time?
We talk about a goal.
Yeah,
Is it, if they're absolute beginner, is it, do I want to learn a particular song?
mm-hmm.
Do I want to be able to strum chords and accompany myself or someone singing?
Yeah,
Do I need to learn a finger style thing to arpeggiate chords?
yeah,
Or do I just want to get to a level where I can move on from there? So is it going to be an ongoing student? So often I'll find, particularly with jazz, you'll have someone come and say, I want to learn this song,
mm-hmm.
my wife loves it,
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be able to play it.
Yeah,
So then you've got this thing of, okay, if it's a jazz song, there's lots of dexterity with the chords.
mm-hmm.
The fingerings aren't your standard shapes,
Yeah,
and often you might need to finger pick a little
right.
because you might be missing a particular note here
Yeah.
and there as you go through the changes.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit of trial and error
yeah,
in that first maybe 2 weeks of that term
yeah,
to see if they're capable of moving on.
right.
Because you do find that some people realise that I can't put the time in,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it.
Yeah,
So then you can revise
right.
and say, okay, well, we can simplify
Yeah,
and get you to a stage where, yes, you'll be able to do it,
mm-hmm.
but it won't be at this level, it
Yeah.
might be at that level,
Yeah.
as opposed to up here.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because as we know, 5 people playing the same piece of music can do very different jobs,
Sure.
yet all may be harmonically correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, Terry, thank you very much for your insight today into studio teaching methods, and once again, it's been a fabulous interview. So have a great day, Terry, and thank you.
Thanks, Duncan, you're welcome.